Ladies, gentlemen, and Spiritborn of all ages, as we progress through Season 6, and especially as we hit the mid-season patch happening here, there are two major truths for our class. None of the bugs are being fixed until Season 7, so all builds that use them are basically officially confirmed safe to keep using, unless you care about the Eternal Realm a month and a half from now. And the other is that we actually got buffs. The biggest of these buffs by a pretty good margin is to one of my conceptually favorite skills for the class, Razor Wings. This is a skill that I latched onto the first time I even had Spiritborn in my hands, way back at the preview event that Blizzard invited us to months and months ago. So now that in this patch it has had its damage essentially increased by 50% and had the internal cooldown removed, which essentially allows you to make the skill properly scale with attack speed and things like that, the skill is now just way stronger than it was before. It is genuinely worth using if you like the feel of Razor Wings, and so today we're going to maximize the hell out of Razor Wings to make an awesome full build around it, and I'll even have some variation for you to work around depending on your gear, as a lot of the time, especially with Spiritborn, we end up talking about the pitch perfect version of the build, and people don't have the full gear for that, which then makes the build perform incorrectly, and then they don't have fun with it, and I just want everyone to have a good time. So today's build has a lot of the same sort of bones under it that a lot of Spiritborn builds do, mostly because the strongest uniques and legendary aspects remain the same across a lot of builds. The legendary items and their stats and affixes are the things that change the most. But this build can reach some pretty impressive new heights through taking advantage of the still existing bugs, and it does it in a way that feels totally different for your gameplay, as you are essentially just permanently shoving out a circle of death around you wherever you go. As for the two variations of the build, it's mostly based around whether you can or cannot achieve a certain level of temperworking and masterworking, so we'll talk about that more in the gear section specifically. However, they share the same skill tree pretty much in Paragon and such, so without further ado, let's just get into the skill tree itself. For your first literally 6 points, you want to just stick them wherever you feel like here. It doesn't really matter. It sucks, but we do not use a basic skill, we do not use a core skill, and none of the passives in the core section actually have any effect for us at all, because we aren't using core skills or using our resources at all. So we just have to spend 6 points so that we can move on to the focus cluster itself. When you get here, we pick up Ravager for bonus Jaguar skill hits on every attack that hits, as well as its enhancements for a longer duration when you get kills with it active, and extra hits against elites that store up as you self-heal. We pick up a bunch of passive ranks inside of this cluster too, 1 rank of Focal Point, mostly just as a gateway to get 3 ranks of Apex for bonus damage to vulnerable enemies, doubled against elite enemies, 3 points of Mirage for dodge chance while evading, but more importantly, crit chance for 3 seconds after you dodge an attack. We have some passive dodge chance, which means we will occasionally dodge, and that crit chance is a lovely bonus to have active. Then we have 3 ranks of Unrestrained Power for bonus damage while unstoppable or unhindered, and we are near permanently unstoppable, so this is a very frequently active buff. We then move to the defensive cluster, and here we'll be taking Armored Hide and its enhancements tier 2, altogether giving us an active skill that sets us to 100% block chance and makes us unstoppable. It sets us to maximum resolve stacks in an instant, it gives us bonus thorns, it increases blocked damage reduction significantly, and then we take counterattack here as well, mostly just to get to the reinforced counterattack actual enhancement for this, for the increased critical damage multiplier that this gives us passively. And while this does actually go on our bar as a skill in this build, we avoid ever pressing it and activating it because we do not want the active effect, as 100% dodge chance overwrites the ability to block attacks, and blocking attacks increases our damage, so it basically just sits there on our bar as a passive stat stick for the crit multiplier that it gives us. We then also grab Scourge as well as its enhancements too, and in fact the enhancements are the main reasons that we get it. The base enhancement gives you a stacking crowd control damage multiplier each time that enemies take damage from the skill, and then Adaptable Scourge gives you lucky hit chance to lifesteal on attacks against enemies that have the poison on them, which is our main source of regenning life. Then we pick up some passives in here too, mostly just 1 rank of Endurance entirely as a gateway for 3 ranks of Perseverance for bonus damage reduction per stack of resolve that we have. After this, we're going to be going to the Potency cluster, and here we'll be picking up, of course, all 5 ranks of Razor Wings as our main offensive skill. We grab its enhancement for vulnerable application, and then we also take Invasive Razor Wings so that they spiral around us and hit all enemies in a radius, as well as last for 300% of their normal duration. If for whatever reason you are wanting to use this build but don't have many bonus Razor Wings charges from your gear, you can swap this out for Poised Razor Wings for the bonus chance to get charges back for free, but this will significantly lower damage compared to Invasive Razor Wings if you have the stats to use it. Then we take another load of passives in here too, 3 ranks of Resilient for a bunch of bonus maximum life after using a Gorilla skill, which does also turn into a bunch of bonus damage because of the Viscous Shield Paragon node bug, 3 ranks of Brilliance for a bunch of bonus damage with Eagle skills relative to your movement speed, 3 ranks of Potent for bonus stacking damage against enemies each time that you hit them with the Jaguar skill. All of our skills count as Jaguar due to the Spirit Hall choices, so this works up very quickly. Then 3 ranks of Furnace for bonus crit damage per stack of ferocity you have. Then 3 ranks of Vehemence for bonus potency skill damage at the cost of increased cooldowns for them. After that we have our ultimate cluster, where we pick up all 5 ranks of the Hunter ultimate skill. As well as per usual, this ultimate is in use because it just offers the best bonuses to other parts of our setup. We take its enhancements as well, which gives us overcapping on ferocity stacks, bonus damage to injured enemies, and a chance for the skill to reset its own cooldown if you get a kill while its duration is active. We use all of that to boost our damage in general. Extra ferocity stacks is more damage, the ult being usable or often creates more damage through the passives too. We then take 3 ranks of Resolution as a passive for bonus damage to elites after casting an ultimate skill, doubled against singular enemies, which mostly just means bosses. 1 rank of Spiritual Attunement up here, mostly just as a gateway for 3 ranks of Supremacy, which is a stacking damage buff as you get kills with an ultimate skill active. But you get bonus stacks when the ultimate ends, and then it starts decreasing. However, if you can spam an ultimate fast enough, like we do with the Hunter in this build, you can just keep yourself at pretty much maximum stacks all the time in active combat, which is a very big damage boost. Then we have a couple of variance points here. If you are using the version of the build without the mythic unique chest piece, you want to take the point here, which will let you take 1 point into Intricacy. This passive does a number of things, but the important part to be aware of for this build is if you use Razor Wings, then use the Hunter immediately afterwards, it will reset a lot of your charge cooldowns for the skill. It doesn't reset all of them, sadly, once you get past a certain point, but it gives you another 10 charges in an instant, so you can use 10 Razor Wings and use the Hunter and get those 10 charges immediately right back without the massive charge cooldown wait time you'd have otherwise. This does create a bit of management in the build, as you need to be absolutely certain that you don't press any buttons between Razor Wings and the Hunter, or else you will have no spammable offense for a number of seconds afterwards while you just wait out your cooldowns. But this is what makes this function properly as a build around this skill. That said, if you use the mythic unique chest piece version of this build, you get 1 rank of this just sort of automatically because it gives you bonus ranks to passives, so you would instead move both of those 2 skill points over to Armored Hide, just extend its active duration and keep the uptime high. Then for our final skill point we have the key passive, and we'll be going with Prodigy's Tempo, which is pretty standard a lot, as Razor Wings is a potency skill, so when we spam it out in droves, we reduce all cooldowns a large amount through this, which is a hefty part of our setup and making it all function properly too. With that covered, then we have our Spirit Hull choices for the build, which are very clearly just double Jaguar in each slot. Jaguar Primary is bugged to all hell. It double dips with a bunch of different things it isn't intended to do, and so choosing any other option is not literally required to make your build function, it's just making yourself way weaker. The amount of damage this outputs is insane. Secondary Jaguar Spirit Hull is a bit less set in stone, but we use it in this build mostly because we do work around Mystic Circles and the Plains power aspect, and every stack of Ferocity adds up to a fair chunk more damage as a result. Moving on from that, then let's talk about our equipment in this build, starting with the mythic that I recommend no matter what, which is the Harlequin Crest. In either version of this build, this just helps us out immensely. The big pile of bonus maximum life is both survivability and damage. The cooldown reduction is massively helpful, and I recommend focusing the cooldown reduction with either your Greater Affix choice or with your Masterworking if you can. The armor is incredibly useful as well, and then you just get 20% damage reduction and 4 bonus ranks to each skill for free as well, which is not only extra damage and cooldown reduction and such in itself, but then also funnels into Prodigy's Tempo, which increases its cooldown reducing effect for each rank that you have of a skill. Then we have our chest piece slot, which is where things get a little bit funky. The ideal, like proper end version would be using the Shroud of False Death for its massive benefits. +1 ranks to all passives is a ton of offense, defense, and utility that is simply irreplaceable. It is massively strong. The only reason you wouldn't use it is if you don't have enough Razor Wings charges from your gear or cooldown reduction to maintain your full gameplay loop from the Hunter and Razor Wings alternating back and forth. Basically, we get bonus Razor Wings charges from Tempering and Masterworking, and then through Prodigy's Tempo as a key passive, we can use those charges to reduce or remove the cooldown of the Hunter before we run out of our Razor Wing charges, which then lets us use the Hunter and refill our charges back up a fair bit. The breakpoint on this is a bit variable, especially now with attack speed in the conversation too, but basically give it a try, play around with it. If you have Shroud of False Death, try using it, and if it feels like the loop is incomplete, like you will drop off of your charges, then you want to swap it off until you can masterwork your gear a bit better and get some more cooldown reduction in other places too. The alternate option then, if that is the case, is just Synth Shell, which used to be the best for the setup anyways, and the main reason is very simply the fact that it reduces your cooldowns massively in a way that does not hurt cooldown reduction as a stat. The cooldown reduction stat itself can only stack up to around 70% maximum, but the effect of Synth Shell does not contribute to that. It works completely on its own system, and so this can significantly ease the requirements of the build by making things like the Hunter just have a third of the cooldown that it otherwise would as a result, making the loop just much easier to complete. Then on our two-handed weapon slot we have Redirected Force aspect, of course, the most bugged legendary aspect for the class, giving giving us a ton of extra critical damage multiplier, and on this weapon you want dexterity, maximum life, and critical damage. My tempers are actually a bit off because I was testing something here, but your offensive temper should be Mystic Circle Potency, and weapon temper is sort of a choice. If you are doing super high pit pushing as your main activity, then you might want Chance for Razorwing projectiles to cast twice because it increases the burstiness of your damage and lets you activate Jaguar Primary Spirit Hall more frequently, which then makes your upward scaling double dips more effective, but this only matters against enemies with high health pools. However, because they removed the cooldown between Razorwing's cast, and because Razorwings has a cap of 12 existing at the same time, you can only have 12 Razorwings out at once, you can now pretty easily hit the point where you summon more Razorwings than the game lets you have in a circle around you, which makes you replace the old ones before the duration is over. This is fine for specifically high pit pushing because you're trying to fish for Jaguar Spirit Hall procs, but in every other type of content it's essentially a negative, so instead I recommend going for bonus furnace ranks with your weapon temper, and this gives you increased crit damage per ferocity stack as we stack ferocity a ton anyways. And brilliance is also an acceptable third choice of option here if you just get unlucky with the others. No matter which of these you do though, your masterworking priority is the weapon temper affix of choice. Then we have our amulet, and on here I actually have the duelist aspect for bonus maximum ferocity stacks. I chose to prioritize this one here because it simply gives us the most potential gain from the extra 50% effectiveness of an amulet slot, especially with that extra 50% rounding 5 bonus stacks up to 8 bonus stacks, which makes it worth more than it actually normally would be with a different aspect. On this slot, your highest priorities are greater affix armor percent to reach our actual armor threshold of 5200, and then attack speed for more obvious reasons. Your third affix would ideally be a damage increasing passive for the class, with Potent being the generally best one, though Apex, Unrestrained Power, and Brilliance are all very good for this one too. As for your tempers, mine are totally out of whack on my amulet. You would want Mystic Circle Potency in the offensive slot, and bonus maximum resolve stacks in your defensive slot, as this also would give us a bunch of damage too. On your rings, first we have the Unyielding Hits aspect to make Guerrilla Skills increase your weapon damage by a portion of your armor stat. We hit maximum threshold for this in our current gear at 5200, making this an extreme damage increase in itself, and we activate it by using Armored Hide on cooldown as our Guerrilla skill. The other ring is the aspect of Fell Soothsayer, which is simply a really strong bugged aspect right now due to the way that it double dips on various effects like Viscous Shield, Plains Power, and even Jaguar Primary Spirit Hall itself, so it contributes heavily to our larger numbers that will pop up with the setup. For ring stats specifically, you ideally want maximum life, attack speed, and critical hit chance specifically. The ideal tempers as well are Mystic Circle Potency and Razor Wings charges, with the masterworking procs ideally all hitting on the bonus Razor Wings charges to make it just much more comfortable to use properly. Then for our gloves, we have the Plains Power aspect on it here, which makes our Mystic Circles increase all damage done for each ferocity stack that we have. We get up to 17 maximum ferocity stacks through our setup, which makes this increase dramatically to give us an absolutely massive damage multiplier that also double dips a lot of our other damaging affixes too. As for ideal affixes, you want maximum life, attack speed, and critical hit chance, just like a ring. And for tempering, you want Mystic Circle Potency and then Barrier Generation, with masterworking priority being the crit chance until you can reach near 100% on your character's stat sheet. Then on our pants, we have the Interdiction aspect, which gives us block chance per resolve stack that we have. We gain bonus maximum resolve, so we gain a bunch of bonus block chance from this. This then also funnels through the Redirected Force aspect for a ton of bonus critical damage multiplier on top of that too. On these, your ideal stats are maximum life, bonus flat armor, and then dexterity instead of the skill ranks that I have for extra skill damage. For your tempers, you want Barrier Generation, and then either maximum resolve stacks or ranks to the Resilient passive, with resolve stacks gaining more value over Resilient the higher your crit chance is, because it funnels into the whole Interdiction and Redirected Force thing. And this also is the affix that I recommend booting all of your masterworking hits on if you have a choice either way. Then finally we have our boots as well, and on here I recommend the Sky Power aspect, which lets you move the Mystic Circle around with you when you evade after it's activated. Otherwise you have to play around the circle where it starts and its position, whereas this aspect lets you move it around with you wherever you want to fight, making it a lot more comfortable to play around, if still a little bit clunky or awkward. An alternative as well worth mentioning is you could use the Rakanoth's Wake boots for some cooldown reduction to increase our cooldown reduction and make the loop a little bit more solid, but then you wouldn't be able to move the actual circles with you, so that's sort of a personal choice. On your boots, you want dexterity, maximum life, and armor as your actual affixes, and for tempering, you want movement speed and barrier generation, with masterworking procs divided up between the bonus armor to help you reach your threshold of armor, or or on maximum life for the damage bonus from Viscous Shield. Then finally for equipment we have gems and runewords. For your runewords you want Yule, which gives you an offering for casting a skill with a cooldown on it, and then use this to funnel into the Earthen Bulwark rune to generate tons of barrier. Especially as every skill that we have is a cooldown skill, so every 6 skills that you use of any kind gives us our barrier. Then we have the classic Zol combo, evoke a skill from another class twice, and you get 20% bonus maximum life. For your jewelry, you want skulls inside of them until you reach the 5200 armor threshold. If you are using elixirs and incense for your armor, you can actually drop this down to 4200 and use some resist gems instead, as the incense will make up for the rest, getting up to the threshold for unyielding hits. That said, this build does not have our actual resistance caps. You do not hit capped resistance. It is just unnecessary on Spiritborn for the rest of the season, pretty much, as we have just near immortality solved through barrier generation completely. Then in your remaining gem slots in the armor, we just take amethyst for bonus barrier generation to make the Earthen Bulwark apply to our entire life pool. Moving on to the sort of final step, then we have our Paragon board setup. If you have less Paragon points than me, then you basically just want to spend less points on nodes that are just extraneous additive damage boosts, and if you have more Paragon points than me, fill in all of the extraneous additive damage boosts that I don't have. Pretty much as simple as that. Starting on the starter board itself, then we head up to the glyph socket. Inside of here, we're putting the Colossal glyph for bonus damage with gorilla skills, which is irrelevant to us as an additive stat, but the secondary bonus is multiplicative damage in general per resolve stack that you have. We gain bonus resolve stacks from our gear, so this can increase its multiplier massively, and this is another one of the double dipping problem points for the class, so it gives us a ton of extra damage. We then go to the board exit, and here we'll be attaching the Viscous Shield board before heading right over to the legendary node itself. This is just the most bugged part of Spiritborn, at least individually speaking. It gives you bonus damage for every % of your maximum life that you have as barrier, except really the coding was wrong, and instead of doing that, it calculates off of base life instead of max life. So instead of being a maximum bonus of 33% damage increase, it can provide upwards of 1000 to 2000% bonus damage depending on how much maximum life you have in your build, and that's multiplicative, so that is a lot of extra damage. So this is one of the biggest bugs going on with the class. In the glyph socket for this board as well, we have the Fulminate glyph to give us a ton of bonus lightning damage, both because Razor Wings itself is a lightning damage skill, and to activate a Paragon node later on too. We take all of the intelligence and the radius 2 to boost this very importantly, as you really very desperately want to hit 150% bonus lightning damage on the glyph effect here. On the glyph effect itself. After that, we head to the right and attach on the sapping board and go directly to the legendary power itself. When you cast 3 skills of the same base guardian in a row, you gain resource and damage. We do that constantly through Razor Wings, so this is just a massive damage boost. We go to the glyph socket on the board, and in here we have the Talon glyph to increase our damage with eagle skills, as well as a crit damage multiplier for the secondary bonus too. We head over and back out of the top side of the Viscous Shield board now, and this time we'll be attaching on the revealing board and going right to the legendary node. This gives you a chance to knock down vulnerable enemies, as well as just a general damage bonus multiplier to crowd-controlled enemies too. After that, we go back over to the top of the sapping board, and here we'll be attaching on our final board, Convergence. We go through the legendary node itself, which gives us a bunch of bonus damage depending on our elemental damage boosts. This essentially converts the bonus damage with lightning that we got from our Fulminate glyph into a bunch of bonus general damage to apply to us too, with 30% being the maximum that it can give you, which you get when you hit 150% bonus lightning damage from our glyph. In the glyph socket on this board then, we have the Spirit glyph, which gives you a bunch of extra crit damage, as well as a stacking damage taken debuff on enemies when we critically hit them. Then we wrap back around to the revealing board itself for our final glyph to put in, which is going to be Ritual. This increases Mystic Circle potency, as well as giving you bonus damage and damage reduction while you are standing inside of a Mystic Circle, and importantly, it's worth noting the Mystic Circle potency stat directly increases how much damage we gain from the Plane's power aspect, so it's quite valuable to have here, especially because of all the ways that we double dip on those types of sources. That just about does it then for all the various things that you need to put the build together, so let's just quickly go over how to actually play it. The main important thing is to always press Razor Wings before you press the Hunter, so it actually resets your charges on Razor Wings and gives you a bunch back, because if you don't do this, you'll just be sitting around for a while, and that just sucks. The best way to manage this, in my opinion, is to spam Razor Wings, then use the Hunter, then immediately cast Ravager, Armored Hide, and Scourge before going back to just spamming Razor Wings to lower the cooldown of the Hunter once more. Then you can use all these charges until the hunter is off cooldown and then repeat that cycle. This way your brain will sort of train itself to never cast the hunter unless Razor Wings is the skill getting its cooldown reset by it. And you will still keep high if not full uptime on all the other 3 skills itself, especially if you're using the Descent Shell version, which reduces their cooldown just sort of naturally, with the only other reminder here just being do not press counterattack. It is a genuine negative to use the active for that skill, so just let it sit on the side of your bar completely untouched and you will be fine. Aside from this, just keep in mind that when you evade, you can move Mystic Circles around with you if you need to reposition, and that your main damage comes from a spiraling skill, so you can take advantage of that with your positioning as well. That just about does it for today, then everyone, your full guide to Razorwing Spiritborn build after the pretty hefty buffs that the skill got in the mid-season patch. I'm also messing around with Shattered Vow as a mythic unique now that they buffed it a pretty significant amount, so let me know if you guys are interested in seeing a proper poison build with that mythic weapon, and we might just talk about it in a couple of days. I hope you all enjoyed this then, and hopefully you enjoy using this Razor Wings build for yourself if you make it for yourself too. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.